Welcome to season 14 of the Parenting Aces podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and this week's episode is all about what's going on in college tennis and with the transfer portal. I have fielded a ton of questions. We've been having ongoing conversations in our Facebook groups about the transfer portal, about the number of international versus American students and players in college tennis. And so this week I have invited two very knowledgeable gentlemen to talk about these issues with you guys and share some perspective and hopefully put an end to the misinformation that keeps getting perpetuated out there regarding all kinds of things in connected to college tennis, but especially with the transfer portal and with scholarship funding. So I want you to please take time to watch or listen to this episode, really digest the information. It's a lot, and we went on for a long time, and there's a lot being thrown at you, but it is important for you to understand the landscape out there if you have a junior player who hopes to one day play college tennis. Before I bring on John and Mark, I want to just remind you guys that we are so much more than a podcast. We have a website. We have one-to-one consulting that I do with you as a family to help you through your junior and college tennis journey. We have two different Facebook groups, one that's open to anybody in tennis, one that's open to parents only. We have TikTok, we have a YouTube channel, we have merch. We have so much to offer you guys. Everything except the one-to-one consult is available free of charge, and I hope you will take full advantage of everything that is Parenting Aces. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with John Parsons and Mark Dayton. Mark Dayton, John Parsons, so excited about this episode. This has been a topic that has been being discussed ad nauseum on our Facebook groups. It's a conversation that I have with families all the time. And with all of the changes happening in college tennis right now, I think it is the perfect time to have both of you gentlemen on the podcast to talk about what's happening with the transfer portal, what's happening with the house settlement with the NCAA, and what's happening with American players versus international players in college tennis. And we've just got a lot to talk about. So thank you both for being with us. I am going to start by asking you, John, to introduce yourself to our audience and tell them a little bit about what you do and where you came from.
Well, thanks, Lisa. Longtime listener, first time caller here. Excited to be on your show. My name is John Parsons. I have a college tennis podcast called No Ad, No Problem. I also have an Instagram, No Ad, No Problem. I've been officially covering college tennis since 2021, the fall of 2021, and then started that podcast in 2022. Prior to that, I played junior tennis competitively, played at the Division III level for a brief time before injury sort of derailed my career there, but I've been really closely following college tennis really since my collegiate career and officially since 2021 in that capacity. I have been attending the NCAAs in that press room there for the last few years. And so it's a huge passion of mine. And the goal of the podcast is really to grow college tennis, give these players, these coaches, these storylines more visibility. Really excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. And Mark Dayton, give us a little bit of your story and let our audience know who you are.
I'm Mark Dayton. I'm one of the Mark Daytons, family owns Target, but yeah, basically. But anyways, long story short, we're a tennis family. We've been involved in tennis. I've been in college athletics for like 38 years. Most people thought I played tennis, but I actually played basketball in college. Couple of kids that went through playing tennis of my own. One decided to play golf in college, one tennis, one now is playing esports. I don't really call that a sport, but hey, it works. So anyways, long story short, I think I'm back now.
You are back.
All right. So up until about 11 years ago, well, not 9 years ago, for 11 years, I was an intercollegiate ambassador for golf and tennis. And when that program ended, we created a free program, myself and Wes Fuller, for kids to do college recruitment. We got it approved by the NCAA, the NAIA, JUCO. Had to go through a bunch of hoops to get it done. And we now do a free video deal for college coaches. It's become quite popular over the years. That where kids can get on there, post a video, post all their information, and for free, they can communicate with the college coaches. Have to be completely free in order to make it work. But we don't really share with anybody else or do anything else. But anyways.
So both of you gentlemen are extremely knowledgeable about the college tennis landscape. You are very current on what's happening with the House settlement, what's happening with the transfer portal. And I want to start with the transfer portal because the transfer portal started becoming kind of a big thing with COVID. We had a year or so where college tennis, we weren't sure what was going to happen. Is it going to come back? Is it not? College tennis has always been kind of in danger of being amongst the first programs cut at the collegiate level because it is a non-revenue sport. And so it costs the universities typically money to run these programs. But John, I'm going to ask you first, can you explain to our listeners what the transfer portal is? What is its purpose? And in your opinion, how should college athletes be using it?
Yeah, so the college transfer portal essentially allows student athletes to raise their hand and say, I would like to transfer, and their compliance office puts them into a portal, which essentially sounds maybe a little AI generated, but it really is just like a spreadsheet of all of the players that are looking to transfer schools. And what that means is that when they're in the portal, now a lot of the rules that exist about whether coaches can contact them change. And so once you're in the portal, a school or a coach from a different program can start reaching out to that player to say, hey, let's chat. Like, are you interested in coming to my program? So it's really a gatekeeping mechanism to say whether or not a student can start having conversations with coaches about potential programs. Transferring within tennis has always been somewhat more common than other sports, but certainly this more streamlined mechanism has made it much easier for players to enter, dip their toes into the portal, if you will, start having those conversations that they can't otherwise have if they are not in the portal. So at a high level, that's what it is. Typically right now within tennis, it opens in May. So this year, the portal opened May 5th. It runs through June 3rd. You typically will see at the D1 level, a few hundred, 300 to 500 players maybe enter into the portal.
Okay, so the transfer portal, let's remember, it's only NCAA. That's one thing to remember all the time. And
so
then,
that's D1, 2, 3.
Yeah. So what happened was the transfer portal was actually invented by football, like most things that we deal with sports. The football players went and filed a complaint that when they got their release letters, they were being boycotted. So the NCAA created the portal for them. And hence it created the portal for all of us. I think the big thing with the portal is, so the portal actually opens in the fall as well. And when the portal opened in the fall, like this year, the average amount of fall players is right around 160 to 200 girls, and usually 200 to 250 boys that enter. This year, the fall portal, before May 5th, we had 343 boy players in the portal. We had 247 girls already in the portal that had come from fall that never got picked up, like never got an offer. To me, yes, it makes it simple for us, but it also causes a big problem because kids think they can just go in the portal and go somewhere, and there isn't money for them at the time that they often go in the portal, or there aren't spots for them. And now with the roster limitations in D1, I've been dealing with this for the last 3 weeks of my life now, and especially since May 5th, like, for instance, I had a really top tier girl that we're bringing here to JSU from a North Carolina team. I'm not going to mention teams or coaches' names or whatever, but that whole team went in the portal, and they're all trying to find, half of them now are just trying to find walk-on spots. Like earlier this morning, I was speaking with the Gonzaga coach. They have one spot, or they have 3 spots, but they have one scholarship to give, because of the grandfather rule, the way it worked out for them. And Once again, some programs don't have 8 scholarships. They only have 6, even in D1. So what happens is you end up with girls that need to walk on somewhere and their parents are going to pay, and the portal, to me, the biggest mistake with the portal in the tennis and golf realm is the PGA has gotten better about it because now they have a whole training thing in West Palm. It takes like 2 years to become a PGA golf pro, but it takes like 20 minutes to become a tennis one. Like you sign up, you go down, you pass the thing, and now you're in the you didn't go to like all the classes and everything. But the PGA actually teaches a thing, and they actually recommend not recommending to your players to go into the portal because it can be a huge mistake for them and they can cost themselves spots. And that's, in my opinion, in our group, you see all the college coaches complaining about it quite a bit, but then you see kids at the very end of things when there's nothing left and nowhere for them to go, that 340 something males and 240 something females, they didn't get picked up in the spring. They don't have scholarships or spots even for this coming fall. It's a mistake, in my opinion, and now it's a worse mistake because currently you have over 500 girls and almost 600 guys now in the portal. It's insane.
So let me ask you both this: if a student athlete decides to enter the portal, does that mean they are giving up their spot on their current team? And what are you guys hearing from the college coaches when one of their team members enters the portal? John, can you take that?
Yeah, so it is school dependent. You do see players who enter the portal and then return to that school. As Mark mentioned, there are many players that do not get picked up in the portal. That's true across a lot of sports. It is a high number of players that don't find a new home. But you are not guaranteed your scholarship if you're on one next year. You enter the portal, like they don't have to bring you back onto campus into your scholarship in a way that maybe you would, and you have that conversation. Yep, I'm coming back. Let's, tee up the scholarship for next year. So it is a risk, right? And oftentimes what I'm seeing is that in the best case scenario, this is a conversation with the coach and the player about what that player's options might be. Maybe that player is saying, I really want to prioritize playing time. And the coach is saying, I don't know if that's going to happen here. So maybe it is in your best interest to enter the portal, but it is a risk. You have to be kind of eyes wide open about taking that risk when you enter the portal. And that would be something that these players need to understand. You're hearing a lot of coaches talk about, look, there are kind of 2 buckets of players who enter the portal, players that are running from something or running from something from that current program or looking for something very different. And oftentimes maybe that very different, maybe it's a dollar amount that really isn't realistic based on what they're hearing sort of in the market, but it's certainly a risk and one that players need to understand is increased by the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty happening right now with things like roster limits. Maybe 2 years ago, there was more ability for these teams to take you on. And now in a much more budget conscious world, in a world where they're going to be regulating how many roster spots you can have, those spots just might not be available.
Yeah. Yeah. And Mark, what are you hearing from the coaches? Because I'm going to share some things that I'm hearing, but I'd love to hear, you've got a lot more access than I do.
Well, so for instance, I'll do it by division real quick. So D1, you've got today, Radford announced gone, both sides, completely gone. Okay.
I saw that this morning. Yeah.
Into the portal later than the ones, because they weren't warned. Nobody bothered to tell them. I had a girl who's now, I'm not going to mention her name, but I'm actually working to get her over to Gonzaga for that scholarship spot, and so I don't do recruiting like for money. I just do it for free for kids that come from programs that need help, and we all know that only about 10% of all the recruitment companies that are out there anymore are actually doing their job for the thousands and thousands of dollars that they're charging people. So D1, if you're going by the tiers, if you go D1, like even today, somebody mentioned Ivy League and they kind of got it wrong. Like the lady said, oh, you can get on an Ivy League team if you have a if you have a 10-4 UTR, and I just about busted out laughing. I'm like, and she goes, well, no teams right now. I was like, well, first off, ma'am, you're looking at after the year is over. Any college coach will tell you that your UTR, when you go in, if you're a 10 UTR girl, you're going to be an 8.5 by the end of the year, because you're not going to play enough matches and you're not playing enough players. And it's based off of, how you've discussed UTR multiple times about how flawed the outcome is. Okay. So that one there, no one in D1, top tier D1 power schools, even the HB, historically black colleges, no one's worried about their teams being cut or their programs disappearing. Now, mid-major, people are worried, because mid-major and low tier, like, I want to mention a particular school, but I'm not going to say the name. But, like that particular school, he was surviving off of having 15 more kids on the roster that were, there after the top 6, because at $50,000 a pop, he's paying for his whole program. Like, the university doesn't have to worry about it. So that's a whole nother story. But then you got mid-major D1s right now where their budgets are cut. Particular university in Louisiana, I'm sure the rumor's gotten around really well over the last 2 weeks. The reason why the whole team's in the portal is because they took away all their scholarships. Everybody was on a year-to-year renewal, and they announced that they were not giving a single player a scholarship. Now you've made a D1 program a D3 program. That's what you did. You turned it into it. All he's got to do is go get players that are going to play and pay for his salary and the operational expense, because there's no scholarships on either side. That's insanity. But at the same time, that university is one of the ones that have put themselves in. There's, I think, 5 D1s right now. I think it's up to 24 D2s that have all put themselves into wanting to be D3. Now, that's a great idea. I'm not saying it's not a bad idea, but some universities were smart enough to do it earlier and got approved. Other ones, some of them are on a 6-year contract. They're 2, 4, or 6 years when you sign your contract with the NCAA. So now what happens is you can't get out of that contract. The NCAA, unless you want to buy it out, that's a fortune. They don't have the money to do that if they're certainly cutting, and D1 is a whole different story. We're talking about the roster limits. That's really so a college coach no longer can go get extra players to help pay for the program. So now D2, I have a lot to say about that, because I was just on a meetings call on Friday, where a couple of good college coaches who are already operating like what we call tuition share programs gave younger guys who are new to D2 how they can protect and save their program. I sat there very quietly. I didn't say hardly anything. And then towards the end, one of the coaches that held it said, Markus, what do you think? Can anybody pick up sponsors? Can you raise money from your players? Can you do this? Can you do that? I said, all that's over with anyways right now, because of just people's funding. Like, people are canceling their country club memberships. Kids are being taken out of, academies right now, because if you're middle class or upper middle class, the first thing you're going to cut when your pay gets cut, or things go up, or your taxes go higher or whatever, you're going to cut out the country club membership, or the kid go into a private, membership. D2 has the ability still to save itself. Not saying every coach is going to do that. You look at Lee won't care. You look at like Lee Underwood. I mean, the recruitment over there, you can put 15 kids on a roster and you're paying for your program really easily. You're a D3 with scholarships is what you got. Okay. D3 coaches, nobody's scared. Nobody's worried, because when you get, like, there's a kid that posted in our group just recently, and I was in shock. He's operating his program for $70,000 a year, and he's bringing in $1 million to that university. He has 22 players between the men's and the girls team, and it's a $54,000 a year school. He's bringing in over $1 million, and they gave him $70,000 to operate. This is insanity. JUCO isn't too scared. I think the big thing that we're seeing in JUCO is we were about to get 6 new JUCO programs. Now it's back to 2, because 4 of them have decided, okay, we're not getting federally funded. JUCO gets affected probably more than anybody when it comes to federally funding, because of a way they have trade schools and everything at their universities, and people don't understand that. So those trade schools fund a large portion of the university. Like when you like Gadsden State here, we're fine. We have 9 to 11 scholarships almost any given year, sometimes down to 7, depending on we're keeping players over or whatever. But we're almost a 2-year rebuilding program almost every year. And we're an endowment program, so we're paid for. They don't need to worry a whole lot about paying for us. But when they build all those new buildings and everything over there, that's federal money that pays for that. That's not even state money that builds their new buildings. So when they hit a federal issue, instead of cutting us endowment, they're going to go cut the volleyball team. So it's just the way it all works. So
yeah,
it just all depends what level.
Right. I mean, I think what's important for listeners to understand here as well is just because the NCAA says that a certain division can offer X number of scholarships for men's tennis or women's tennis, that doesn't mean the school has the budget to fully fund those scholarships. So, you look at a Division I school, for example, and think, oh, well, there are 8 scholarships on the women's side. Well, there might be, there could be, but there also could be 0, and there could be anywhere between 0 and 8, depending on what the budget is of the school. So I think what Mark is trying to explain is that when a school isn't fully funded, doesn't have scholarships to offer, then the tennis program looks very much like a Division III program where there is no athletic scholarship money in terms of what the athletes are actually getting financially. And this is why I keep pushing so hard that academics are really important if your kid wants to go play college tennis. They have to be strong academically because that scholarship money is there. That academic money is there at every level. And go ahead, Mark.
Lottery money, lots and lots of lottery money. We don't have that here in Alabama, but all but 3 other states have it. And lottery money is your number one thing. You need to look, if you're a kid right now and you're playing high school tennis and you're in Georgia where you lived at with, the Hope Scholarship, I mean, you can get a freaking 14 on your ACT score and I can still place you for free at a JUCO program. There's D3s over there there's an NAIA over there that I can place you at. Bruton Parker is a perfect example. You can be playing at Bruton Parker and never pay $1 out of your own pocket, but nobody wants to do that. That comes into that entitlement thing. I want to play at Georgia. I want to play at Florida. I want to play at Tennessee. And then you look at them and you go, dude, you're a 5 UTR. You're not going to be playing Georgia, Tennessee. Roster.
Well, and John, I want you to talk about this too. This whole notion of the name brand schools, and this kind of segues into the whole question of, are we letting too many international players onto our college teams? But there is a real struggle for the tennis coaches at schools that are not the name brand schools to recruit players. And if American kids aren't going, what choice do they have? They have to field a roster. So, John, can you talk a little bit about looking outside of name brand?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the player side, what is most important here is there are so many factors that are going to change over the course of junior tennis players' college career as we look ahead to the next 5 to 10 years. What likely won't change is the school you go to and the college experience you can have. And many of these players are not going to be playing professional tennis. College tennis is an avenue to prepare them for the professional world. You look at the Fortune 500, the number of women C-suite executives who played sports, it's over 90%, right? Tennis is a vehicle for life skills. It will teach players discipline, hard work, team camaraderie, working with difficult team members, listening to a coach. It's a team sport in a way that it isn't in juniors. And so I think parents and players need to understand the life lessons that you're really looking to get out of a college experience. And that should be top of mind when thinking about a program. And certainly for a small number of players, they're able to get all of that and play at a name brand big Power 5 Division 1 program. But for most players, it's not going to be that case. And they need to understand where they would be happy with maybe out tennis. And tennis is an additive part of their collegiate experience in the same way many other extracurricular hobbies for non-student athletes are, and a way to branch out beyond academics. So to me, that's the most important part on the player front. On the international front, this is, I think, always been a topic of consideration in tennis, and I think is becoming more top of mind for players and parents, because you do see that tennis is the most international sport in collegiate tennis, particularly I know at the Division 1 level, that is certainly true. And it becomes the question of, are those players taking spots from US players? You hear that a lot. And I think I'm sympathetic to that, because I recognize that those are spots that they feel somewhat deserving of. But you have to put yourself in the shoes of these college coaches who right now, if you are not one of those name brand programs, you're not able to attract the very top US junior players. One of the challenges with these US junior top players is they only want to go to a few handful of schools. And so if those coaches whose careers depend on competing against those other programs, they have to look outside of the US. And that has been a common tactic for many programs and is continuing and exacerbated by the fact that many other countries and federations are now seeing the benefit of having players go to college. So it is certainly not without its downsides for US players who maybe want a spot there, but there are so many reasons why those international players coming to campus makes college tennis a much better product.
And I'm going to just say, my dad played college tennis at Tulane back in the end of the 1950s. And there were a large number of international players in the lineup at Tulane at that time. So this isn't something new.
It isn't.
Go ahead, Mark.
I'm 55. When I was a grad assistant for golf and tennis at University of Florida a long, long time ago, both teams were made up of international players. And it wasn't, here's the thing, we were great. Spurrier was like the big thing. Football was everything for the University of Florida. Basketball was everything for the University of Florida. But you go over there and you talk to the tennis and golf coaches at the time, and they're like, I can't recruit a player at the level I need. And it's still, John, you covered one thing, so I'm going to cover the other aspect. I'm going to cover the I'm entitled aspect, okay? My mom and dad pay taxes, and I'm so entitled to go to the University of Florida. Now, here's your problem. If you're not the level of the University of Florida player, like for instance, here's a good one. A number of years back, I brought up a particular player. He ended up married to one of the girls off of a Big Bang Theory. And I brought him from Aruba. He was a dual American citizen. Most people didn't know that. And people lit into me over that. Like, that was one of the first kids I kind of recruited foreignly and brought him here and everything. And I did it because at the time, the men's team for the University of Florida, this is pre-Brian. Brian was at Georgia Tech at the time. The men's team for the University of Florida was struggling to find anybody that was an American really to get on that team. And the coach at the time wasn't a big fan of international players. Like, he was looking for a kid that was kind of a dual citizen. Find me one. If I'm going to take one, I'm on a dual citizen. And every day I correct people. Like, what was the one the other day, Lisa? The lady said, what was it?
Our tax dollars are paying for these.
But yeah,
spots.
she said, you remember where she said Virginia and Virginia A don't have but one I said, that's not true. There's two Americans on there. One's named Navarro and the other one's got a foreign German sounding name. And I said, and then there's a dual citizen on there. There's 3 of the 8, and then you get other guys, particular guy that loves to bark in my group all the time about Americans all the time, drives me crazy. And the thing is, up there in Michigan where he lives at right now, if half the
the D2s and the D1s, if you put any of those kids that he's talking about on those teams, it will be like watching high school tennis, and nobody's ever going to show up. And none of those kids are ever going to achieve winning a championship. It isn't like when you find, Evan Lane, and I begged him to come to Florida. Of course, his dad's a good friend of mine. He's like, he's going to Michigan. So that's fine. It's nice to see a top-tiered American. But now I'm going to cover the opposite of what John said, that entitlement thing. I can't tell you how many times I have been at a national championship for juniors somewhere, whether that be Gulf Shores, Rome Tennis Center, Lake Nona, Kalamazoo. I can't tell you how many times I've watched a coach walk around and say, I've got a spot for you. And it be a brand name school. And that parent tell them, I'm sorry, we live in Kentucky. My wife and I went to Kentucky. She's going to go to Kentucky. And then later on, you find out she never went to Kentucky because there weren't even two things happened. Either she wasn't the level of what Kentucky was looking for that year, or there were no scholarships that year. So she refused to play because she's not going to get a full scholarship, even though her parents are driving a $500,000 Winnebago around the United States, taking her to tournaments, And then the number 3 thing is, and I've had this happen to my own girls, I had a great junior world team tennis team. I mean, we were lighting it up, and I had 5 girls on that team, and I was so happy. And any one of them could have went and played college tennis almost anywhere they wanted to. I had offers galore. I had my phone ringing off the hook. Please, coach, get this girl to come play for me. Not one of them ended up playing college tennis. You want to know why? They're all doctors or lawyers now. They wanted to focus on getting in the best. Like 2 of them wanted to go to Ivy League, Harvard and Yale. And then the other 3 wanted to get into top tier. One of them wanted to be a cardioperfusionist, where you replace artificial lungs and stuff like that. She's more those girls are more focused on their academics. And let me tell you, the teams that they did were the schools they went to. Those intramural teams were just almost as good as what the regular team was. They'd play each other, and it would be fun to watch. It wasn't like watching kiddie tennis. So that entitlement factor, every single time somebody talks about Americans, I'm like, it's the top. What was the lady said the other day to you, 1,000 or whatever? I think she meant. But if the top 500 American girls and the top 500 American boys were available every year, there wouldn't be a top 6 spot available to an international. That's the simple fact. I mean, yeah, you can say, oh, there's this many number, like what that particular guy says. Yeah, there's that many number, but that's over 4 years. So this year there'd be this many, this year, that year there'd be. So if there's 500, 500, 500 every year, we could take them all, but most of them don't play. Look at the top 100. What year was it, Lisa, that I posted one time? You asked something, and I said, only 19 of the top 100 decided to play college tennis. This is insanity to me. What do your parents pay all this money to haul you around the country for 19 girls out of the top 100 to only play college tennis? And people don't understand all the factors. And then, of course, later, I'm sure we're going to get into the tax thing, but they don't understand all the factors that happen. When you're a college coach, you're coaching at a top tiered D3, D2, NAIA. Now there's at least 5 teams in NAIA, a top tiered D1, any of those. If you don't win, you get fired. Like the lady that was talking about the Ivies, I said, we just lost another Ivy coach. The rotation over there is kind of heavy. If you don't win, is that, I wouldn't say that they're the most competitive, but dang, they're dang near the top. 8 schools that go at it, and it matters to them if they win or lose every year. And, and they don't have an athletic scholarship to give. So any foreign kid you see sitting over there, and most people don't realize this. When my daughter got interviewed by all 8 Ivy Leagues, okay, all 8 of them. And we were sitting, and I won't tell you which one particular one, but the coach was sitting in front of us at the USP thing, and Alana had just beaten like the top girl from Everett. Like she was like 6'5", and and she ended up, I think she ended up playing for Stanford in the end. 6'5", and she was a senior, and my daughter was a sophomore with what they call a letter to where you can actually come to the recruitment thing, even though back then you couldn't be recruited as a junior. And so right after that, we're sitting down and we're talking with a college coach, and she's talking about like, oh, I would love for you to come play for us. And since we don't do athletic scholarships, I can talk to you now. Okay. And tell you what we can do. We're like, when we sat down with another particular Florida school, which I won't mention his name, the men's coach did all the talking about what they could do for my daughter. And the women's coach just asked about her dog and stuff, her brother, because the men's coach, that's a trick. That's like a trick at any one of these things that you go to. So what happened was, ultimately, we're sitting there and, she proceeds to tell us, during the summertime, we're going to pay for your pro tournaments that we want you to play in. We're going to give you the list that we want you to play in. This is what you're going to do. You get about 2 weeks off during the summertime. Didn't bother my daughter at all. During the fall, you're going to have 4 practices, like 3 practices on some days, 4 practices on another one. That would be you and your doubles partner. Plus, you're going to go to the gym, which doesn't count against your 20 hours because we're going to send you with other teams and you're going to work out in the gym. And I'm not going to be there, so it don't count against your 20 hours. There's a lot of tricks, okay? And then, my daughter was sitting there kind of shaking her head, so, and she graduated early at 17. So she's like 15, like deer's headlights, And then she goes, and then during the spring, you're going to be required to do, when we're not playing a match, you're going to be required to do 2 to 3 practices a day. My daughter says, okay, that sounds great. And I don't mind practicing so hard, but when I'm pre-med, when do I do what I'm supposed to be doing for my degree? And she goes, you can be pre whatever you want to be when you're done playing 4 years for me. You can take basket weaving for now, all I care. She literally said that, okay?
Yeah.
Sitting right behind me is the Miami coach, long-term, 25-year friend of mine, hands me, an old guy like me, hands me over a flip phone and says, I can't hand it to her, but you can. And I just want her to talk to my 2 pre-meds, one on the boys team and one on the girls team. I've got them on this phone right now. So she sat there and talked to them, and they said, no, he gives us time off or whatever. So you go to an Ivy League and you go ahead and take a good look. Most of the Ivy Leagues, if you see the 4-year player getting a 4-year degree in 4 years, because it's in communications or education or something, who the hell spends $100,000 a year on an education degree? I'm a politician on the board of education. I'd love to hire that person, but ultimately it's still craziness. It's just the insanity of the miscommunication. And I'm going to go back to what I said before. USPTA, PTR does not train tennis professionals how to actually place kids. They've ran 2 of them. I think one was in 2016, I think, and the other one was in 2021, where they communicated with each other, sent out that survey to all the tennis pros, and only 3% of them ever played college or professional. Like 3%. And
that's an ongoing issue that we've talked about quite a bit on this podcast, actually. And that's I don't want to go down that path today because I really want to stay focused on what's going on with the transfer portal and what our kids need to understand, what parents need to understand about that. And I want to kind of circle back to what you guys were saying earlier about what does it mean when a player enters the transfer portal? What does it do to their relationship with their existing college coach? And what if they don't find a new school to go to? This is a problem. You can go back, but what does it do to that relationship? What does it do to the relationship with your teammates? And John, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mark.
It depends on the coach. Like, for instance, there's a D1 coach right now that had 3 girls go in the portal. Now 2 of them have figured out this is not a good idea. Like, they've had crap offers pretty much. And, even big schools that have no scholarships are saying, if you'll walk on, if you'll fill out the financial aid, and they're like, no, I'm not going to do that. Especially one of them's an international girl and her family's not wealthy. Another one, that third one is from a wealthy family. But here's the thing. If they did it the right way and they sat on with the coach and they said, I'm just looking for NIL money, which is insanity too. That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, I'm not going down that path today. That's way too complicated.
So, but they did it the right way. They went and they sat down with their coach. They told him and he said, you know what? I'm going to give you 3 days. Then I'm going to start looking in the portal. And 2 of them came back and he said, great, I'm giving your scholarships back. But I'm just warning you, year to year now. I'm being honest with you. You said you could leave. I feel like I could find a better player, but I like you. You played for me for 2 years. I'm going to take you back. That's one thing. Now, if it's a particular teams, like there's whole teams in there. There's one where the rumors spiral pretty good and about what happened over there, with the coach and the particular player. There's ones where the coach was angry, fought with the players or whatever. The university probably would have been way smarter just to go fire the guy and hire another coach. And that other coach probably could have gotten back. Like a good, for instance, is Chicago State right now. President is taking over there. I mean, he's recruiting back he's working on trying to get back the players that left that would love to still be there because they live around Chicago, and that's great. But
Mark, let's talk about how this impacts current junior players. And John, I want you to jump back in here because I want to hear you're on these campuses, you're at these matches all the time, you're talking to these players, and they're seeing recruits come on campus, junior players that are looking to come play at their school. They're coming for unofficial visits, official visits. So the existing players are entertaining those PSAs when they're on campus. But if there's so many experienced college players up for grabs, what are the chances for a junior player who's 16, 17, 18 to actually have an opportunity to play at that level?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, my vantage point will be more from like the D1 perspective here. And I think what's happening is most of these coaches will tell you that they still want to move forward with 4-year players and that the transfer portal, they view it as additive. But what juniors and parents of junior players should understand is that if a player comes in to the portal with more experience than their prospective junior player, these coaches are in the business of winning. And so what I think really impacts junior players here is the way of kind of gaming out, and not in a bad way, but just what sort of spots will exist on that roster has really become complicated. Previously, we rewind 5 years, like you have 2 seniors leaving, you got 2 open spots that year. And now that could change depending on who enters the portal. And so I think it's really important for these junior players to understand that that is possible, because in the same way that current college athletes have flexibility to move around, these current college coaches have a lot of flexibility in bringing new players in that might start above those junior players who need more time to develop into college tennis. So there is no doubt that it complicates your view of, one, who will you actually be playing with on that team, which is a huge deciding factor for many players, right? You could be going on those recruiting visits and understand that those players might not actually be there. They might all plan on entering the portal in just a few weeks' time. So it emphasizes some of the things I think you've already talked about so much on this show, which is you need to be happy going to that school for your own personal development, where college tennis is additive. And there is going to be some more unknowns for junior recruits going to college today than maybe there were in years past, because that team might look different. The coach might look different. Your conference could look different. And that does make it challenging, but that is the reality that these junior recruits are going through.
The big thing
go ahead.
The big thing I'm noticing with D1 is it's become kind of almost regional. All the guys that are up in the north, like starting with Michigan, Illinois, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Washington, Oregon, right now they've kind of decided I'm not really going to go after that little 4-year girl that has been griping about, well, what's it going to be like up there during the wintertime? They're now recruiting. Like I had one particular girl that I placed up in the northern school, just did it on Tuesday last week. And all she cared about was the stipend. Like, can the stipend get me home from where I'm at? Because once again, Georgia player. And she said, can that stipend get me home? And they matched that. They went in and talked to their athletic director. They gave that stipend and he pulled that girl. Now he's got her for 2 years, her junior and she just had one heck of a sophomore year. So that's kind of where I'm seeing some of this stuff go on. Although
I do agree with John when it comes to some schools, like especially when you've got a turnover of the college coaches, like what happened at University of Florida. Both of those coaches right now are looking to recruit the players that are going to be there with them for 4 years. That's a good school to be a junior trying to get into. And they're not looking at the transfer portal like I can get a Merck right now that'll win me 2 years with the championships. And, you know, and we have that. D2 is a whole nother animal because we all know that the top tiers of D2 go and recruit Mercs that, you know, couldn't get into a D1. We do that in JUCO. I mean, JUCO is a perfect example. You know, at Gadsden State, we once had, you know, like Dakota Harris, you know, top tier. The kid could have played D1, you know, and then at the same time, you know, Wanda McPhail over there at Meridian, she had recruited herself like one of the top IMG kids. When he signed his name, he got a 12 on the ACT, and that's the best he did. So he couldn't get into D1 that he wanted to go to, so he went over there. For 1 year, it was great watching them play. You know, like it was great. It was phenomenal tennis. But
that reinforces what I say all the time, which is it's really unfortunate that the NCAA named the divisions 1, 2, 3, which insinuates a hierarchy of talent and skill. And it really isn't a true hierarchy of talent and skill. There are Division II schools teams that could beat many Division I teams. There are Division III teams that could beat many Division I teams. There are junior college NAIA teams that could beat many Division I teams. So I want families to get out of the mindset that D1 is at the top and it descends from there. That is not an accurate way to look at these schools. And if your child is really committed to playing college tennis, there is a spot for them somewhere. It may or may not come with scholarship money attached to it, but it will come with a great college experience and a great tennis experience if that's what your child is committed to creating for themselves. And I think this whole idea of this transfer portal and, you know, listen, my kid transferred twice during college, so I get it. There's some times where you really do need to make a change. The existing program, for whatever reason, just isn't the right fit. And to expect a 17 or an 18-year-old to make that decision based on the great sales tactics of many of these college coaches is asking an awful lot. So I'm not saying that transferring is bad. I'm just saying that if you are a junior player right now or the parent of a junior player right now, understand what the landscape is that you're dealing with and understand that having strong academics in addition to being a strong tennis player is only going to help you.
One small thing to add is, once again, don't always put your name, brand, whatever to everything. Because here's the thing, we had 48 NCAA schools this spring that didn't have a full roster of 6 on sides. That's crazy. And you know, when you're talking about a D2, and granted in that conference, you're probably not gonna, you might win a couple of matches here, but you know what, you're gonna have a lot of fun when they play the D3s, the JUCOs, the NAIAs. You know, you're gonna enjoy those matches. You're gonna play. And I tried telling one team, one kid, I was like, there's 2 spots left on this thing. You're a guy. There is no money left. Like, please just take the spot that's being offered. He's putting together he's gone down there and gotten you some namesake scholarship for 10 grand. You're going to pay $2,000 to go to this university. You're going to be in the top 6 because there aren't top 6. There's not 6.
Right. Right. The opportunities exist. And I mean, that's the bottom line. And we have got to widen the funnel. We've got to get out of that name brand mindset. John, I know your focus is mainly D1, but you know, you go to matches where there's like what do you call them, interdivision matches and things. Because I know a lot of schools are just itching for competition. You know, they can't just play in their conference. They can't, you know, they've got to find other teams that are willing to play against them. And sometimes you see these teams come and, I mean, it's good tennis.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at the top of Division III, which I was fortunate to play in for a little bit. I mean, not only are those top tier academic schools. I mean, the best, Division III programs, you look at like a Claremont or an Amherst or Williams, like those are world-class academic institutions, and they have players on that team that could play at the top Division I level, but have chosen to take a different path for themselves. You're starting to see actually players from different levels transfer into Division I and make impact at those top tier programs. So the level is absolutely there. The demands and the student experience might be a little bit different, but that's where you need to really understand what is important for your junior player. Is it furthering their academic career in college? And if so, the world is very wide in terms of opportunities, and there are spots available at all sorts of different programs. One piece of advice I would give to junior players who might be concerned about, will the transfer portal impact my playing time or spots on the roster? I would have that conversation with the coach. I would look back at the roster and look at the transfers that they have brought in. How have they impacted? How many have they brought in? Ask them why they brought in those players. Ask them how they see your role on the team fitting in if there are transfers who come in, because I think those are really good questions. And oftentimes you'll get a good understanding of the coach's transfer portal philosophy when you ask them these questions directly. And I don't think junior players or their parents should be fearful of asking those questions, because they're really critical in the recruiting process.
Yeah, and I'm going to just take that one step further and say, not the parents. The player should be asking the question, because
agreed.
the player is the one that's going to be attending that school. The player is the one that's going to be interacting with that coach day after day after day. And as a player, you need to know what your role is going to be. And for these players that think they're going to play their way into the top six, please stop with that mindset. It just doesn't happen very often. Every now and then you see a player come off the bench and play their way into the lineup, but coaches are looking to recruit new number ones. That's their goal. They're not looking to recruit new number sixes. And if you are number 8 or 9 or 10, the chance of you making it into that top six are very rare. So be clear with your questions to the college coaches. Get them to tell you what your spot is going to be. And even though they say to you when you meet with them, you're going to be a top six player, because of all of the players in the portal, if they are looking for a new number one and somebody pops into the portal that fits what they need, that may bump you out of your spot. So you need to understand this landscape and what you're up against.
One thing to remember too is, college coaches have bonuses. They have a win-loss record that they're not everybody, but there's plenty of them. They'll tell you I'm at 50% or I'm at 60% for my conference or what have you, or they're going to reprimand me or fire me down the road, and my favorite thing to always try and pitch to people too is, if you're not going to go play professionally and you're doing this for the academic part, then go find a college coach that the bonus is based off of his GPA. That's the whole reason why we created the whole GPA thing over the years. I mean, nobody ever cared about GPAs. How old are you, John?
I'm in my 30s.
Okay. They cared about them when you were around, but I'm in my 50s. And even guys that played, like Alex Koziski, like when he played college tennis, came out of IMG or whatever, it was great because he was playing. I think he was on one of the first teams that you heard the college coach say, I'll come kick your door in if you're not at class. You screw up my GPA and you drag it down. And it's an award now. Like, we get awards for it.
Yeah.
And it's great when you see a school, then there's plenty of D2s, but there's I'm more in D3 than anything, that, their bonus is based off of that GPA. And like, I was talking to a coach just recently, a D1 coach, and I didn't realize that part of his bonus was based on, because you don't hear it a whole lot in D1. And he said, no, I have this one girl who drugged down my GPA and I'm ticked off about it because, you know what? He didn't get his $4,000. So
yeah, that's a great point. And I think that is an important question to ask. How important is the team GPA to your culture at this school and, to what you're trying to achieve as a coach? And, listen, we've talked about a lot of different things today, but the bottom line is being an accomplished junior tennis player is going to open doors at colleges and universities that may not have been open to you without tennis. It certainly was the case for my kid. And I think we have to understand the value of that in the big picture, but also understand the very minuscule percentage of junior tennis players and college tennis players that go on to have successful careers as ATP or WTA tour players. It is so small. It's like 0.001% or something. It's like really
like
tiny.
For 1%.
Yeah.
Nowadays, people don't even realize you want to turn your kid pro, you need $150,000 up front. Just plan to spend 150 grand that first year. And some people have it, some people don't. Usually the kid that's so talented, like John, you were talking about D3s. There's a D3 right now that will be nothing but internationals next year, like nothing but. And the players that are on that team, like you said, Lisa, they could beat a D1 team right now. Okay. And because of that, when that coach calls around and asks D1 teams to play them, they're like, nope. You know, it's just like, you know, you take somebody as good as Derek Racine or John Hansen at Valdosta or Derek over at West Florida. There are teams in D1, like big name D1 teams that his players have beaten them before. They won't play again, you know, like, and that goes, I do want to add one little thing about what you said about the communication thing. You know, there used to be a really great at the conference, at the ITA conference, every year there was this discussion about coaches saying, I don't want to speak to the parent. I don't want to speak to the tennis pro. The kid comes, the kid does the communication. If the kid can't, kid's not adult, I don't want to deal with them because I'm going to get a baby. I'm going to get another homeschool kid here that falls down, sits on the court and cries their brains out because they didn't even ever have interaction with other players. They can't get along with their teammates because they never went out anywhere. They did this, they did that. And all they did was eat, live, and breathe tennis with some tennis pro or their mom and dad, which is even worse. So that becomes a whole issue. I used to love that part at the conference, and we haven't seen it in about 8 years now. Love to see that one back because that was such a great community. And we do these things, you know, where we have these meet calls, Zoom calls, and all this stuff where one college coach will say, I'm putting this together and I'm inviting everybody. Well, Mark, will you come on there and talk? Because I used to talk a lot about how you raise money. I'm pretty wealthy, pretty good, you know, but you have to know how to go raise money around your schools. But you know what? That's kind of done for all of us now. Really, at this point, it's all about survival.
Right. And every day we're hearing about another team getting cut. And I feel like we've regressed 5 years. We were going through this several years ago. And I felt like every day I was posting another team gone, another team gone. But we've got to understand as parents of junior players and as junior players that what is the true value of college tennis? It is not to be able to say that you played at name brand school A or name brand school B. It is, as John and Mark have reiterated over and over and over again, the life lessons that your child is going to gain, the friendships, the relationships, the experiences that they're going to have. And, you know, circling back to the whole international students on campus, the more exposure our kids get to kids from all around the globe, the better position they're going to be successful in the workplace and in life. So let's understand truly what the landscape is. Let's stop perpetuating misinformation. If you don't know something to be fact, come to an expert. You can ask John, you can ask Mark, you can ask me. I'm not an expert, but I know experts that I can forward your question to. And let's start perpetuating fact.
Before we move on to the tax thing, the one thing that parents need to understand too is, you know, like a good, for instance, is one girl that I placed and now transfer portal and now replaced again. She asked me specifically, I'm going to turn pro. My parents are going to pay for it. I'm turning pro. I said, okay. And then she goes, and then I want to be a college coach afterwards. I was like, I love it, you know, because I take great pride in doing the ITA Cup one year, and there being 11 college coaches at the ITA Cup that I had helped place or worked with at some point. I take great pride in that. But I was like, this will be exciting. I look forward to seeing where you go. And if you do what Alicia Parks did, awesome. But if you only do with, I'm not going to mention names, if you only get there, great. We'll work it out. It'll work for your, kind of what you talked about with tennis and golf. Those are great things for whatever career field you go into, especially if you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. You need those. It'll get you contacts that you need. So, but the one problem is every parent seems to think, and John, you were in D3 and I was in D1, and, you know, and there's a lot of other guys in between us, but there aren't a whole lot of college coaches in any sport that really take you to that professional level that do one-on-one. The difference with where I priced her at was the college coach, he couldn't offer the same amount of money, like the same amount of cost of living or the stipend or whatever. And he didn't have any IIL money to give, but he did have one thing. I will work with you personally one-on-one instead of the 20 hours, because a coach only gets 20 hours with each player no matter what. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody obeys that rule, but, you know, that's the thing. Like, you know, like a Doug Nagel, you look at an NAIA coach like Doug Nagel, look at how many of his kids can turn pro and what he can do for them. You know, and there's plenty of other names I could announce, but I like Doug, and I like the fact that he really gives a crap. So if you tell him that's your goal path, he's going to go, well, you're not going to, you'll work out here in the 5 hours a week with the team, and you'll probably do 15 with me, so I can take you to that next level because I want you to be that better player. But parents don't get it. I love the idea of us fielding players into the professional, like I did Kevin Anderson years ago to Champaign. You know, look at where he went. Melanie Uden, you know, like
from a D3, I will say.
Yeah. So Donald Young, I mean, I've worked with some great kids along the way, but not all of them achieved a whole lot, you know, like some of them did, some of them didn't. Some of them became names because of the way they looked or, you know, the way they acted sometimes. But yeah.
Well, let's get back to the tax thing really quick, because we've been going for over an hour now, and I know Mark, you've got to go, and I want to respect your time and John's time. Let's clarify where college scholarship money comes from. Where are the funds coming from? Who's paying for those funds?
Okay. John, do you want me to do this one, or you want to do it?
Sure, I'm happy to add on after.
Okay, so the misconception is tax dollars. Tax dollars since the 1980s. We used to have this thing. You can watch a little movie called Blue Chips if you want to. I always recommend that to parents. Back in the 80s, we had these things called Friends of Programs or boosters, and they were figuring out ways to pay for players. And schools were taking money from tax dollars and paying for players too. That all ended. Congressional law says that you cannot use federal tax dollars to pay for any players. You can pay for facilities and operational maintenance. You can actually, which is something I learned just recently, because you learn something new every day. I did not know that a state school can actually go and buy all their food and beverage for the year and pay for it with their tax dollars and then resell it and keep all the money. Didn't know that one. That was one that I missed. And I'm a reader. I read tax law like there's no tomorrow. So those things can be paid for. The only time we can really mention that your tax dollars might be paying a little bit for somebody on the team is when you're doing tuition share and you've got a team where a coach has 5 scholarships and then he's got all these paid kids. He's got 10 more and he's getting 1 tuition per 2 kids that he signs up. So that means he's got 5 more or 5.5 more scholarships, or not scholarships, but money to spend on the program, right? And the way that money works is it goes into his salary operational, but it can go into the tuitions because at certain schools like D3s, the tuitions pay for the kid to be there, right? Or the program to exist. So the only problem is internationals don't usually qualify for any of that stuff. They don't qualify for FAFSA, that's federal money. They don't qualify for namesake scholarships because if I'm Mark Dayton or Lisa Goodman Stone, if Lisa Goodman Stone says, I'm going to donate 2 scholarships to this university every single year. I'm donating $100,000 of my money. You're going to earmark that money specifically for a kid in like nursing or whatever you went to school for, or whatever your grandma went to school for. And that kid's not going to qualify for that because, and you're going to say no internationals. That got to be an American kid. You can even say it's got to be a kid with, like we do at Gadsden State. You can't be outside of 40 miles outside of our state line. We don't give you a scholarship. You know, like those. That's how it works. I mean, anybody that says that federal tax dollars are paying for kids to play, it's not even paying for American kids to play, much less your internationals. That's Congress. You know, like. It's
right.
a congressional law. So.
Right. John.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mark laid it out. I think generally this sentiment arises in just going back to that sense of this college athletics is an American institution. And so there's a sense that that should be serving first and foremost American players. And even if we should make it super clear, like those scholarship dollars are not coming from your tax dollars, but there are other benefits that are going to that institution that players who come and compete in college athletics are able to take advantage of. But I think generally we should just make it super clear that the non-American players here are additive to the overall experience and competitive landscape of that college environment. And there are other factors there that we've already talked about where coaches are in a place where they need to compete. And so it is not true that your tax dollars are going to the scholarship fund of these international players, right? You are not paying for essentially these players to, quote, take a spot from your own player or a player that you've, known since they were a junior. But I do understand why parents today have concerns about the shrinking number of spots because of all these factors that exist, like the portal, like the limiting of spots. But that's why it's super important to leave this conversation with an understanding that there are enough spots for your junior player to play collegiate tennis. They need to be open to what these different programs can offer them outside of these very tippy top collegiate programs.
And
Love
also, the Congress doesn't. JUCO is the only programs and endowment money. Like if you or I donate money and say this is what I want to donate it to, it's the only time that you can use them for athletic scholarships when it's specific. A good, for instance, what this one was just recently, there was a guy, and I know University of Florida's budget like no tomorrow, and I've showed it to people numerous times because all your budgets are public record. Like
Absolutely.
even if you're a private university, you still have to file it. Your statement of economic interest, you still have to file it. So you know exactly where the money's coming from, where the money's going to. And this guy said, well, I didn't like the fact that, University of Florida is paying for, tennis and golf players that are foreign from our endowment money. And I said, which endowment money are you talking about? He said, Gatorade and Halls, because most people don't realize the way that the guy that reinvented Halls, like the reason why they give them to you at the O-Dome out front for free is because we invented them on campus. Gatorade was invented on our campus. Gatorade is like a $290 million endowment to the athletic programs every year. And Halls is like, I think it's 85 million or something like that they give to the athletic programs. But that's all the new stuff that you see being built all the time, all those new indoor tennis courts and everything at Florida, even when you go out there and you wonder about, we built at Florida, they built one of the biggest intramural centers ever. Like when you get right there on campus, that big mat, and there's 40 tennis courts over there, like it's a great indoor everything, badminton. And I mean, it's insane. That was all paid for by that endowment money that comes into the athletics and then goes out. So athletics just isn't what you think it is. It's not just the sports teams that you watch on TV, not even the ones that play in, but also intramurals are financed from that money too. People don't understand how. Go to the athletic director and ask him to show you his budget because he has to go and stand in front of the board. I've been on the board and I'm an elected politician. Trust me, it's fun to watch your football coach because the football coach always shows up. The basketball coach always shows up. The baseball coach, then you're wondering where the tennis coach is at. Like beg me for money. Yeah. But
right.
You can only.
I think it's just important to understand that this misconception that your tax dollars are paying for scholarships for these programs. That is not true. And
Facility-
when you start to look at rosters and start to say, well, how come this school has X percent international players and this school has X percent, it's not. I think, John, you said it really well. We have to stop looking at it as if these players are taking something away from the American players. Instead, look at it as a gift to your child to get to go spend so much time with people from all over the globe that are going to blow their mind and help them understand that at the end of the day, we're all humans. We're all trying to be better people, better athletes, better academically, better in all ways. And why not lift each other up as opposed to, looking at this as something that's taking away from. I like your term, John, that it's additive. I'm going to steal that one because I think that's a much healthier way to look at it and a much more realistic way to look at it. We send our children to college to help them grow as human beings, not just as tennis players, not just as students, but as human beings. And what better way to do that than to be exposed to a global view of life experience and background. So I really hope we can just nip this whole thing in the bud, stop talking about it, focus on helping our children become the best tennis players they can be, the best students they can be, the best humans they can be, and then we all benefit. So I'm going to just leave it there. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. It has been a pleasure chatting with you both. I appreciate your knowledge and your willingness to share it with the Parenting Aces audience, and look forward to many, many more conversations around all of this stuff as things continue to change, and hopefully you'll come back and update us as needed. But thank you so much for being here. Thanks to my audience. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time on Parenting Aces.